I want to go to a major development on Capitol Hill, where House Speaker Mike Johnson now says he believes conditions should be placed on California wildfire aid.
Breaking news out of Washington, D.C., and what is frankly a stunning and discouraging development, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson has told reporters on camera that he supports imposing conditions on federal assistance to blue states like California, currently being devastated by wildfires, under the Trump administration. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as I said, we are seeing an ongoing, increasing theme of elected Republicans publicly declaring that federal assistance should be politicized, that there should be concessions extracted from blue states like California, conditions imposed on them in ways that have never been done to red states experiencing crises, and in ways that had Democrats even suggested doing something similar, these same elected Republicans would be shouting from the rooftops. I want to play this clip because Manu Raju of CNN was the one who broke the story. He asked Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, and Johnson was pretty cold-blooded and pretty direct. I'm going to play the whole clip and unpack it together.
I want to go to a major development on Capitol Hill, where House Speaker Mike Johnson now says he believes conditions should be placed on California wildfire aid. I want to bring in CNN's Manu Raju, who joins us from Capitol Hill. Manu, you just spoke to the speaker about this issue. I mean, what is he saying?
Yeah, I just spoke to him just moments ago about all of this. Remember, typically aid to rebuild after natural disasters typically does not have conditions. Typically is done by significant bipartisan support. But this has been a different situation with Donald Trump coming into office, with Donald Trump and Republican criticism over the leadership, the Democratic leadership in California, and a sign that the aid to California could come with strings attached and could become a big fight in Congress.
We've got to have a serious conversation about that. Obviously, there's been water resource mismanagement, forest management mistakes, all sorts of problems. And it does come down to leadership, and it appears to us that state and local leaders were derelict in their duty in many respects. So that's something that has to be factored in. I think there should probably be conditions on that aid. That's my personal view. We'll see what the consensus is. I haven't had a chance to socialize that with any of the members over the weekend because we've all been very busy, but it'll be part of the discussion for sure.
What about the debt limit increase? What about tying the debt limit increase to it?
There's some discussion about that, but we'll see where it goes.
And that last point has come up in private meetings as well, is about how to raise the national debt limit to avoid a debt default. The suggestion there from the speaker that potentially could be tied to aid to California. He said this is just a discussion. We'll see where it goes. He was non-committal about that, but certainly not ruling that out. So expect that to be a live discussion. Now, Democrats pushed back at some of the accusations made about the leadership of the state of California, and some already are pushing back at his suggestion that there should be some strings attached to it. One Congressman, Jared Moskowitz of Florida, said that about Johnson's comments. He said, "This is a mistake. If you start this, it will never end. When Dems retake the House, they will condition aid to Florida and Texas. Disaster aid must stay nonpartisan." And that has been really the tradition for many, many years, even though sometimes it's subject to negotiation. Some of the aid to rebuilding after natural disasters, typically it's approved as a major disaster relief package, was approved to deal with the hurricanes and natural disasters that hit last year through parts of the country, including in the southeast of the United States. So how will this be resolved? That's going to be a major question and a crisis that the incoming president, Donald Trump, will confront, and how the Republican single party GOP rule of Congress, how will they deal with that? All big questions in the weeks ahead.
It was one of the rare moments of bipartisanship where you would see President Biden standing along Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, for example. Manu Raju, really appreciate the reporting.
Yeah, so what a cold-blooded, callous, cruel, hypocritical development. Classic elected Republican. That is just everybody. We should have all seen this coming. Of course, elected Republicans are so sinister as to threaten to attach conditions and consequences and concessions to federal assistance. Jared Moskowitz, he's a moderate Democratic congressman. He serves in a Floridian district. He used to be an emergency director in Florida. So this is a guy who has all sorts of relevant experience. Again, as the clip showed, he condemned this. He said this is a mistake. Now, where I disagree with Congressman Moskowitz is I don't believe that when Dems retake the House, they will condition aid to Florida and Texas. I don't think Democrats actually have it in them to be that callous and that cruel. Moving forward, perhaps they should threaten to do so if this is going to be the standard that Republicans set. But how despicable would that be? Imagine under a Democratic presidency and Democratic control of Congress seeing something like this. But you never did. You never did. Senator Chris Murphy reacted to this, and he was pissed. He said they need to raise the debt ceiling to pass their massive tax cut for the super wealthy. So the message is, we will only rebuild California if our billionaire and corporate friends get their money. Unreal. It is unreal. I mean, we discussed this in a previous video. I mean, Donald Trump was going to struggle to raise the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling was raised multiple times during his presidency to accommodate massive spending. He wanted Democrats in the Biden administration to pass it for him so he wouldn't have to expend political capital. Democrats wisely said, no, if you're going to raise the debt ceiling in order to accommodate a massive $2 trillion tax cut for the uber rich in this country, then you need to spend the political capital involved in your mandate. You say you want a landslide, you want a mandate, do it yourself. Trump knows, or at least rather the people around Trump know, that they actually don't have a mandate to pass massive tax cuts for the rich and the uber rich. And so now they see this as their political opportunity. Well, maybe we can get some Democratic support if we dangle California, disaster relief onto this bill. And again, no, if they're prepared to do this for California, they won't just stop at California. It could be Minnesota, it could be Michigan, it could be New York, it could be Maine, it could be Massachusetts. Who knows? Why would they just stop at California? Absolutely disgusting. Brian Tyler Cohen, friend of the show, weighed in on this as well. Mike Johnson just threatened to potentially extort California by adding conditions to wildfire disaster relief aid. He said Republicans might attach unrelated things to the funding, like Trump's demand to raise the debt ceiling. Then he added, very appropriately so, California pays more in federal taxes than it receives in turn, while Mike Johnson's Louisiana takes more than it gives. So you want to talk about fiscal responsibility? Red states are generally much more dependent on the federal government than blue states, certainly than California, the fifth or sixth largest GDP, largest economy in the world. The California economy by itself rivals that of the totality of Great Britain. It's an economic powerhouse, far more so than any red state or any other state in this country. And you want to lecture about fiscal responsibility, as Republicans often do? Interesting. This development, this notion of threatening to conditionalize assistance, as you can tell from the first clip, it really shocked CNN hosts. They were visibly stunned, audibly stunned, like, wow. Well, before this development with Mike Johnson, CNN anchors also responded to, because we've seen, again, an increasing level of elected Republicans coming out and suggesting this. Well, there was one yesterday that also stunned CNN hosts, and we're going to play this as well.
Now, I just want to throw in here, and you can certainly add to this because you know the nitty gritty, there were not significant strings attached when the Congress gave money to states that were affected by Hurricane Helene and Milton, states that are run largely by Republicans. These are red states.
Yeah, I mean, there was roughly $100 billion in that aid that was rolled into a larger bill to keep the government open. You know, you've heard some conservatives in the past say that they need to cut spending to offset the amount of money that goes to federal aid efforts, but usually that's a small portion of the House Republican Conference or Senate Republican Conference. This is a Republican leader, the number 2 Republican, John Barrasso, saying there will be some strings attached. It's unclear exactly what that means, but the process will work like this. The White House Budget Office, which would be run by Russ Vought, who's a conservative nominee to run that office, assuming that he is confirmed, they'll put out a request for how much money they want. Then it'll go through the Senate and the House to figure out what they want. Now, if Vought and Trump are demanding certain conditions, then that's where the Republican leadership ultimately is going to be, and that would be a shift, considerable shift than what we've seen in the past, which is bipartisan support behind a lot of money that's needed for places that desperately are hit hard.
Particularly red states.
Yeah.
No strings attached, that certainly in recent history, and now it's a very democratic state.
You can see it, just the disappointment, the discouragement, the disillusionment. And by the way, responsible journalists should be calling that out and making it a point, not just casually throwing it in, that it's elected Republicans who are doing this and threatening to do this, elected Democrats who are morally superior. It doesn't matter, but they are. They're just better people. They are better human beings than elected Republicans. They don't do this to red states. But the reason that Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, John Barrasso, and an increasing number of elected Republicans are doing this, folks, is because they believe one of two things. Either they won't be politically punished for their cruelty, or perhaps more likely, they will be politically rewarded for it. So maybe you and I and everybody we know should make it a point to tell them that's not going to happen. But the only way that the elected Republicans will catch the clue, will get the signal, is if they lose elections as a consequence of this, which they may not. Clearly, they don't believe they will. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.